Let's get into it. So we have a lot to cover today. I'm going to try to move it through it pretty quickly, and then we will have a Q&A section at the end. So today we're going to figure out calorie balance. We're going to figure out a calorie target for you. We're going to talk about how to track progress and how to make adjustments, because that's ultimately the most important thing. You know, any calculator out there can give you that starting point, but really the magic is in being able to adjust it correctly for, based on how your weight is or is not moving, or how you're, how you're feeling and things like that. We'll talk about weight change rates, what's realistic, maybe what's not realistic, macronutrient targets. A lot of people talk about macro ratios or macro percentages. We'll talk about the pros and cons of using that. Spoiler, I don't love doing that. Step targets, the importance of them, feeling satisfied in deficit, mostly just relating to hunger, preserving muscle mass, and then we'll have a Q&A. So we're going to move through it pretty quickly, but hopefully not too quickly. Okay, so quick background. I'm sure most of you know who I am at this point, but I do like, just kind of giving a quick background, just in case you came from, Danielle shared it on her story. So if you're here from Danielle, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming if you're here for me, especially too. But I'm Alex. I'm 29 years old. I'm a husband. I have 2 golden retrievers. I have a baby coming July. So we're about 1 month away. July 14th is Maddie's due date. I'm from Michigan. That's where I currently live. We lived in Illinois for 1 year, and we're kind of tossing around the idea of a North Carolina move, but we'll see what happens. I was coaching people been coaching people for about 10 years. I was doing group fitness training back in 2020 when my gym, shut down because 2020, right? And so I started doing online and found out I really, really enjoyed it. I feel like I'm pretty dang good at it, and was able to work with more people in kind of a more flexible way for both me and the clients. So it was really cool. Since then, I've been able to work with over 2,000 people across a dozen or so countries. I'm the co-founder of Forward Forever, which is for clients, and Pivot, which is a software for coaches. It's not released yet, but it will be probably later this year. All right. This is the slide that I think every single person in the entire world that has a weight loss or weight gain goal needs to make this core to their person. They need to understand this more than anything else. I'm sure you've all heard of it, but I don't think people understand it to the base level degree that we need to understand it. So this is the underlying fundamental principle of weight gain or weight loss. There is no getting around this. Calories in versus calories out. So if you eat more calories than you burn, you're going to gain weight. And if you eat less calories than you burn, you will lose weight. If you are in a calorie deficit, you will be losing weight. And if you're not losing weight, unfortunately, you are not in a deficit. A lot of people have said things like, I'm in a calorie deficit, but I'm not losing weight. It's like saying I'm running, but I'm not going anywhere. Although maybe that's not the best analogy, because you could run in place. Regardless, I hope you understand what I mean. If you are not losing weight, you're not in a calorie deficit. So calories in, these things just come from the foods and the drinks that we eat. Anytime there's calories on it, you see the nutrition facts label, 100 calories per serving. We're downing 3 servings. That's 300 calories, right? So we need ballpark in the neighborhood of, 1,600 to maybe 3,000 plus calories on a daily basis to maintain our weight. And obviously it's going to have a huge range depending on the person. Some people may burn a little bit less. Some people may burn a little bit more. Me personally, I burn about 3,000 calories per day. And then the calories out, this comes from much more than just your exercise. So I know a lot of you guys probably have the wristwatches that tell you how many calories you burn, or you do like a group class, or you go on the bike for a bit and it says you burn 600 calories. One, don't pay attention to that number. It's very, very inaccurate. Outside of a lab setting, we don't know how many calories we burn, but you don't need to know that, and we'll talk about why. But there are many more things that incorporate calorie expenditure than just the energy expenditure, which is this one right here. Eat, energy, or exercise, activity, thermogenesis. These other ones, don't really worry about them too much. BMR is how much we burn just from being alive. Like if we were laying in a bed, not doing anything, it's basically just to keep us alive. The organs, it takes energy. The brain takes energy, the heart, the stomach, everything takes energy. TEF is thermic effect of food, the calories that you burn or the energy that you burn from digesting and processing food. And then NEAT this one is the most variable. NEAT right here, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is Any kind of movement that is not planned exercise, and this is the one that is way, way, way variable on a person-to-person basis. Somebody may have burn calories from NEAT, maybe in the neighborhood of like 100. Other people, it could be 600 or 1,000. This is super variable. So think of like pacing throughout your house, tapping your foot, whistling, dancing, walking around the grocery store, et cetera, et cetera. Now, a lot of people will say like, oh, well, calories in, calories out doesn't apply to me because of my hormones or my genetics. And that is not totally true. It will still boil down to calories in versus calories out. However, hormones, genetics, and environment can impact both sides of the equation. So if you feel like you have a tougher hand dealt to you and you feel like somebody's losing weight at a faster rate despite roughly the same calories, that could be totally true. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can really do about it. So we just have to play the hand that we're dealt. Okay, so just because we don't know our calorie expenditure outside of a lab does not mean that we can't be pretty solidly accurate in terms of our calorie intake, calorie balance, and like our weight gain, weight loss rates. So we're going to treat this like an 8th grade algebra problem. I'm so sorry to hit you with the 8th grade algebra at 10 a.m. on a Saturday, but we got to work through it. So it'll be a really, really simple, straightforward problem. If you guys remember that x minus y equals z, for example, if this was 5 and this was y, and then this was like 2, we would know that y equals 3, right? It's just a simple problem just like that. So calories in minus calories out equals weight change. We know calories in if you're tracking calories, of course, and you're doing it accurately. And we know weight change as long as you're looking at, your weight over time, and we'll talk about how to track your weight over time. But if it's going up over time, we're eating more calories than we're expending. And if it's going down, we're eating less calories than we're expending. I know this is like the most basic stuff right now, but it's something that too many people feel that it does not apply to them, but it is a fundamental law of physics. It's the law of thermodynamics. Like, we cannot get around this. All right, I think that's all I want to say here. Yeah, that's all I want to say on this one. I feel like you've got a pretty good handle on calorie balance. All right, so calorie tracking. Now, this can feel super daunting, but especially if you haven't done it before, but please don't feel like you need to be perfect on this. So when you want to start saving money, this is just like such a straightforward analogy. If you want to start saving money, you start tracking your expenses. You start looking at, crap, I didn't realize I've been paying for HBO Max for, what do they call it now, Max? I've been paying for Max for the last 8 months. I didn't know that was $12.99 a month. Wait, they raised it to $15.99 per month? I think that's accurate, by the way. Whatever. They do have good stuff. So we do the same thing with our diet. We want to track our expenses. We want to track where we are spending our calories. Okay. So here are 2 app recommendations. These are obviously not the only 2 that I'd recommend, but or the only 2 that are out there. MyFitnessPal is obviously the most popular one. I just don't love it because in a lot of places they have paywalled barcode scanning, which I think is a scummy move. But Chronometer still has barcode scanning. It's free. MacroFactor, I really like it. I'm sponsored by it. Use code Alex for a 2-week free trial. Other apps are totally fine. Now, a tip I have for calorie tracking is just start by tracking. First, track 1 meal. Just try 1 meal. Don't feel like you have to be perfect every single day, 7 days a week to start. Just start somewhere. Track 1 meal. Get the feel for it. Once you've got that, then try to start with simple recipes. Something like broccoli, chicken, potatoes, like just really straightforward stuff. An example of something that might be a little bit more complicated is like a casserole. But honestly, I think still people overthink this. Some people will add up all the individual ingredients from the weight of each individual ingredient and then take it. Let's say it's like 6,000 grams. They ate 300 grams. Then it's 5% of it. It's like, okay, that is an option for sure. I think a lot of people would do just fine if they did, build a recipe with the casserole and then just say like, I ate like 10% of it or 33% of it and just track it that way. I think that's good enough for most people's cases. And when you're out to eat, a rule that I got, like a rule or like a suggestion I got from a friend named Mateo is just round to the nearest 250 calories. He calls it the 250 rule. I don't know if he got it from somewhere else, but I really like that because I think that we can be maybe if you're not like very experienced with calorie tracking, you might have no idea. If you go out and get like a burger and fries, you're like, is this 750? Is this 1,000? Is this 1,250? Honestly, don't overthink it. Just pick one of those and probably err on the higher side of that if you're eating out. But you can also look up other entries. So for example, if you're eating a burger and fries, go look at like Five Guys, right? Five Guys Burgers and Fries, or Red Robin, or Sonic, and just look up comparable entries. Okay, we're going to start getting into the interactive portion of this. So grab a pen and paper, grab your phone, grab some notes. Page S, does MacroFactor have a library of entries to choose from? Similar? Yes, they have a from MyFitnessPal. So yes, they do. And the upside to them is they have a registered dietitian verified, RD verified database. And so MyFitnessPal can sometimes have like entries that are, well, they're just custom, like I can enter a Rice Krispie treat and put it as like 5,000 calories. I wouldn't do that, but like I could hypothetically, and then somebody might enter, 5,000 calories for a Rice Krispie treat. I don't know. Obviously, most people would know a Rice Krispie treat is not 5,000 calories, but yeah. So they do have a library of entries, but they're RD verified, which is nice. Okay, so here is 2 options to start finding your calorie target. And I think the first is the gold standard, but the second is probably a little more comfortable for people to do if they have no idea. The first one is start tracking a normal day of eating and look at 2 to 3 weeks of data. So let's say I'm eating like, 1,800 calories, and the next day 1,750, the next day 1,900, and we just go on and on and on for like 2 weeks. And then I look at averages, and it's like, okay, roughly 1,800 calories per week or per day is my average. All right, now we have that data. That is probably roughly going to be your maintenance. Most people, just the way they eat, are roughly at maintenance. I know this is a very broad statement to make, but it is kind of the case that most people are roughly near maintenance. And then we, maybe based on overweight and obesity rates in America, maybe we are in a small calorie surplus, but it takes a lot of time to gain weight. And the other way to find your calorie target is to use tdeecalculator.net to get an estimate based on inputs. So you enter like your height, your age, your weight, how active you are. Now, this will not be 100% accurate to you. You're going to need to make adjustments to it, but the same could be said either way that you do it. So it doesn't really matter which way you choose. Just pick one and start tracking. Next, you're going to want to start collecting some metrics. So these are the 4 that I recommend personally. Feel free to do more, but weight is going to be the big one. If you have a fat loss, weight loss goal, you are going to be wanting to track weight because otherwise you don't know if you're in a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus. So you won't be able to make adjustments to your weight otherwise. Now, is it possible to lose weight without tracking your calories? Absolutely. Is it possible to save money without tracking your budget? Absolutely. However, I think it's a really good idea to track weight, and it gives you some data to work off of. What gets tracked gets managed. Okay, so weight. It's very important that you follow these conditions. Same time every day, roughly. You don't got to be like, 8:57, it's weigh-in time, but just like after you wake up, don't do it at 4 p.m. after you've eaten and drank a bunch. So just do it after, you wake up, before eating or drinking anything, after using the bathroom, and with minimal clothing. Because if one day you're wearing, shorts and no shirt, and then the next day you're wearing like baggy sweatpants and a hoodie, the weight's going to be way off. So we just want to try to get the same conditions for those weigh-ins as possible, as best as possible. Next, we want to look at circumference measurements. So I have it around here somewhere. Oh yeah, right here. So just like a little flexible measuring tape, just like this. I like doing the neck, the waist at the belly button, and then the hips. And I put my feet together and go around the widest part of my hips. Those are great starting places, but feel free to add more than just that. And I would do those 1 time per month. Weight I would do every day. Look at circumference measurements. If you like want to grow your arms, for example, and you want to do like, bicep, tricep, just widest part of your arm. Like I do everything. I do neck, shoulders, chest, arms, both sides, forearms, both sides. Waist, hips, both thighs, and both calves. I do everything because I've been lifting for a long time, and I just want to see if I can get any sign of progression. I'm very happy to see it. Speaking of which, strength. And I think this is a very underrated one that people kind of conceptually know, but I don't think they give themselves enough credit for getting stronger in those lifts over time. And like, I kind of get it. If you're doing like a lat pull down, who really cares if the difference of like 90 pounds for 10 reps versus 90 pounds for 11 reps? But you do that over time, and then you look back like, wait, I was doing 50 pounds this time last year. Now I can do 100 pounds. Like that's very, very significant. And I don't think people give themselves enough credit for actually looking at how much stronger they've gotten. And it's a really valuable metric to track over time. If you're not tracking your lifts right now, I highly recommend it. A free app that I've used for, I don't know, like literally 10 years, and I actually did some consulting for them, is Strong. Just Strong app. It's free to use. Really like that one. And then progress photos. And these ones, this is something people are so uncomfortable with. I get it. Like I totally hear you. It's not fun to strip down, obviously not completely naked. We don't gotta be, whatever. But I would say it's a good idea to take progress photos, take them once a month along with circumference measurements. Month to month, you might not see that many changes, but you look back 3-6 months, you are going to see very significant changes, and you're gonna be really, really glad you had progress photos. So even if they're uncomfortable, just take them. Okay, when we are looking at weight, it's very important that you zoom out, because so many people, they weigh in Sunday and then they weigh in Monday and they're like, holy shit, I gained 3 pounds overnight. I'm a fat ass. What happened? Like, that is not the case, guys. That is not, you did not gain 3 pounds of body fat. These are just temporary stomach fluctuations. Could be caused by, maybe you're a little more hydrated. Maybe you have a little more stomach content. If you ate more fiber, that's going to be a high volume food. Maybe you have more glycogen, which is the stored form of carbohydrates. So always zoom out, look at weekly averages. I recommend doing at least 3 to 7 weigh-ins per week, and then averaging that, and then comparing that average to the next average and the next average. And I like looking at 2 to 3 weeks of data at a time. If you want an easy way to do this, I have a metric collection data sheet. It has weight, calories, protein, fiber, and steps. And then it has some fancy charts and stuff like that. But yeah, it's free, and I'll just copy and paste it. No, I won't. I cannot do that. I was going to, wait, can I? Yes. Okay, great. I'm going to post it and pin it in the chat, just because we're going to move off this slide in just a moment. All right, it's pinned in the chat now, so feel free to use that. You don't have to use that. There are plenty of other options to average. You can make your own spreadsheet if you wanted, but feel free to use that one too. Okay, so you have your calorie target. You've been tracking your weight. Now what? Like, you have the data. What do you do with it? So I want you to analyze the data. And it sounds maybe a little bit, I don't know, intimidating to do, but it doesn't have to be. All you have to do is look at the averages and then adjust your calorie target based on what's happening. So are you moving in the direction you want? If you came to the fat loss, like weight loss presentation, I'm assuming you want to lose weight. Probably, right? So let's say if weight is going down, you're golden. If weight is not going down, you have 2 options. 2 options. Can you lower your calories, or can you increase your movement? Now, there are a lot of options within that. There are a lot of ways to do both sides of those things. So some people don't love when I boil it down that simply. But I also think the messaging around weight loss can be very, very confusing when people are like, oh, it's not that simple of just eat less and move more. And I definitely understand that that perspective. It's just that at the very base level, if we strip away all the fancy ways to do that, incorporating more high protein meals, going for a daily walk, it is that simple. Eat less or move more. Those are the 2 options you have if you are at a plateau and you are not losing weight. There's nothing else magical to do. We are going to go through a few examples here, and I would like you to interact in the chat. There are no right or wrong answers. So here we go. Okay. We have 3 examples. This is the first one, example A. So what should you do here? This is taken exactly from the data sheet. So this is exactly what it looks like. So here we have our weight, right? This person has been, we'll call her Susie. Susie has been taking her weight every single day for 3 weeks. And now we have 3 weeks of averages. We have 181, 181.1, and 181.9. Fat loss is the goal in this example. What I want you to do is take the next 10 seconds and just say, what would you need to do here? Would you need to reduce calories or increase expenditure? Would you need to do a cleanse? Would you need to do a detox diet? Would you need to go? Yes, perfect. Lower calorie intake. That's it. That's how simple it is. Clearly, we can see that this person is in a calorie surplus because over 3 weeks of data, they have been increasing weight just slightly at first, and then it went up a bit more. So I would be very confident and comfortable saying that this person is in a calorie surplus. So they would have to decrease their calorie intake. Perfect. Now, this one, okay, 181, 181, and 180.7. Is this person losing weight, maintaining weight, or gaining weight? Somebody just go ahead and throw it in the chat. Those are the 3 options here: losing weight, maintaining weight, or gaining weight. And I know these feel like brain dead examples, but I'm trying to make a point here. And so it does matter. They're maintaining. I would say this person, yes, they are at maintenance. I don't necessarily disagree. And I think this is almost a gray area. I gave you guys 3 options, and I almost think this is a little bit of a gray area because they maintained here weeks 1 to 2, and then week 3, maybe there's a slight bit of decrease, right? Just a tiny, tiny bit. So if I were a coach, I would be talking to this person saying, how are you feeling? Do you feel like you're getting stronger in the gym? How are your energy levels? And if they're saying like, yeah, I feel good, I'm okay with, if we did continue losing about maybe 0.3 pounds per week now that they've, kind of got it dialed in, if they're happy with that, then let's keep rocking with that. 0.3 pounds over the course of a year. Oh man, I shouldn't have done this math. It's going to put me on the spot. 15 pounds? I don't know if that's right. But I don't know. Somebody get a math check on me. But anyways, yes, I think they're in between maintenance or maybe a slight deficit. And if this person did want to go faster, they could always decrease their calorie intake or increase their energy expenditure. Largely, steps are a great way to track that. Nothing magical about steps. We'll talk about that later, but just a good way to track just like general movement. But yeah, slower is not necessarily a bad thing. You can go faster, but it does have some downsides, which we'll talk about later. And then final example. Okay, fat loss again is the example in this one. So 10 seconds. This person, I'm just going to give it to you. This person's maintaining, like for sure, like 181.2, 181.1, 181.3. And it won't always be, for you to tell if you are maintaining or not, it won't always be this just like spot on, like, oh, okay, I'm within 0.1 pound. It won't always be perfect like that. Maybe you're within 1 or 2 pounds across weekly averages, and you're kind of going like this. That is totally, totally normal. But yeah, if you want to start making, some progress on the scale, this person would have to decrease their calorie intake or increase their expenditure. Realistic weight change rates. Oh God, weight change rates. Maybe the neighborhood of 0.5% to 1% body weight per week. So if you're 200 pounds, for example, realistically, you could maybe shoot for 1 to 2 pounds per week. I will say 2 pounds is very, 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 it can be very aggressive depending on the person. Very roughly, this is not perfect math, just not perfect math, but just hang with me here. Very roughly, a 500 calorie deficit per day will work out to about 1 pound of weight loss per week. Very roughly, 1 pound of weight change might be about 3,500 calories. That's, again, not perfect, but it's kind of the number that the industry uses because it's convenient. And it's more about like just kind of, I don't know, helping people understand that they're not going to gain a pound of body fat overnight because you'd have to be in a 3,500 calorie surplus, very roughly. Again, not perfect math, but it's good enough for most purposes. Faster is not necessarily better. If you realize like, okay, I'm losing at a 0.5 pound per week and I want to go faster, you can try. And you can always walk it back. You can always be like, nope, that was too much. But just know that if you do try to go faster, you do try to cut your calories more and more and more, you're probably going to be more hungry. You are going to have more fatigue. You are going to have worse recovery, and you are going to have worse muscle growth. Muscle growth gets worse the further into a deficit we are, and better the further into a surplus we are. Now, there are diminishing returns the further we go into a surplus. I have a whole podcast on that. I think it's episode 3. I don't know, something like how to optimize muscle growth, if you're curious about that. All right, protein targets. So we have our calorie intake. We know how to adjust our calorie intake. We know how to collect data. Now let's talk about protein targets. So protein is a macronutrient. A macronutrient just is a nutrient we consume in macro amounts or large amounts. When most people talk about macronutrients, they're talking about protein, carbs, and fats. So let's talk about protein first. Protein is the building block of muscle. If you want to build a brick house, and you send a bunch of workers, you're like, hey, Saturday, 10 a.m., I want a bunch of workers there. Let's build a brick house. And the workers get there and there are no bricks. You are not going to have a house, right? Pretty straightforward. Muscle is quite literally made of protein. So you need to have sufficient protein intake in order to help you build the brick house or build your muscle. It also helps us feel satiated, and it increases energy expenditure marginally. I would aim for about 0.7 grams per pound of body weight and up to 1 gram per pound of body weight if you're in a deficit and you're relatively lean. Now, if you have a goal body weight of about 30 or more pounds to lose, if you have use your goal body weight for this calculation if you have 30 pounds or more to lose. So let's say you're 200 pounds. Actually, you know what? We have some examples coming up. Here we go. Perfect. So here's some examples. Person A. They weigh 160 pounds, and their goal weight is 150 pounds. They only want to lose 10 pounds. Then they use that 0.7 multiplier. So 160 times 0.7, 112. Don't feel like you have to get 112 on the money. Shoot for 110, 120. Anything above that is reasonably fine. Person B, this person does want to lose 30 pounds, so they're going to use their goal body weight for this calculation. Because protein needs are dependent on lean mass, so 30 or more pounds is kind of a relatively arbitrary number. I just like it as a pretty good cutoff point. So yeah, just use your goal body weight in a lot of cases. And then person C, if you are lean and you're in a deficit, I would consider pumping that up to about 1 gram per pound, maybe even higher. And again, any one of these people could increase their protein intake beyond what these numbers are. What body fat percentage do you consider lean? So healthy body fat percentage, that's a question I just got in the chat. So healthy body fat percentage ranges for men from 10 to 20%, and then for women, 18 to 30%. So anywhere in that range, like a man could be 10% or 18% and be equally healthy. Like 10 won't necessarily be better than 18. What would I consider lean? Probably like sub 12 for men, maybe even sub 10. And then for women, maybe like sub 22. Sub 20, it's lean. I mean, it's lean. But again, like think of this as a spectrum and not like a super hard number. Like, oh, if I'm at 22%, I can eat 0.7 grams per pound. And if I'm 21%, then I eat, 1 gram per pound. Don't worry about it too much. And if you haven't prioritized protein in the past, these targets might seem daunting. Like, how am I supposed to get 140 grams, 150 grams, 112 grams? But luckily, we can still see great results with protein targets that are lower than this. These are to maximize muscle growth, right? So if you're currently hitting 60 grams, if you track your calories, you're currently hitting 60 grams, don't freak out and be like, fitness is not for me. Like, I'm not doing it. Don't worry about it too hard. If you're hitting for 60 grams, shoot for 80 grams, shoot for 100 grams. And here are some easy ways, everything takes work, but here are some ways to increase your protein. So first, increase your portion sizes. So instead of 3 ounces of chicken at dinner or whatever meat you're doing or whatever protein, I don't want to be non-inclusive to vegetarians and vegans, but we're using chicken as the example. So instead of 3 ounces of chicken, shoot for 4 to 6 ounces. That's all you have to do. And roughly your palm, probably about 3 to 4 ounces worth. So if you look at your palm, you're like, it's about the chicken breast that I eat, give or take. That's probably going to be about 3 to 4 ounces. So just do like 1.5, maybe even 2 palms worth. 2 palms worth might be a lot. That's a lot of chicken. Another way, more protein at breakfast. So many people don't eat enough protein at breakfast. So Greek yogurt, milk, cottage cheese, eggs, especially egg whites. Egg whites are exceptionally lean. One easy way to like bulk up the protein content of eggs that you're already eating. If you like eggs, maybe throw like, 2 eggs in, and then hit it with some egg whites too. You pump up that protein intake drastically. Very, very lean protein source. And then high protein snacks. And some people don't love when I recommend high protein snacks because they're like, no, Alex, you should be getting your protein from meals, not snacks. I don't care. Like, I don't care how you get your protein in. Dude, do your thing. Like, it's not that serious. If you enjoy beef jerky, Greek yogurt, hard-boiled eggs, lean cheese, protein shakes, do whatever you got to do. Protein shakes is sometimes not super hot topic, but sometimes a hot topic because people are like, well, I don't want to have protein powder because it's processed. Okay, all food is processed. I think you're in the wrong place if that's your frame. I don't think anybody here is thinking that, but if you are, feel free to ask me questions after. Protein powder is just powdered milk for what it's worth. Okay, carbs versus fats. A lot of people come to me and are like, Alex, how many grams of carbs, how many grams of fat should I be eating? What macro percentages should I be eating? Don't worry about it. So this study by Johnson and colleagues found minimal differences in weight loss between a high carb and low fat versus a low carb and high fat diet. So as long as calories and protein are equated, we will see basically the exact same outcome in terms of body composition and health markers. It's been studied. So don't worry about it. Targets for carbs and fats, they don't really matter. Hit your protein target at a minimum. Just do this. Ready? You're going to hit your protein target at a minimum, the one we just calculated. You're going to fill in the rest of your calories with carbs and fats, and you're not going to worry about carbs and fat ratios or targets or anything like that. The only thing I will say is most people will feel better and perform better with not cutting out carbs. Like keep carbs in your diet, and ideally keep your carbs like relatively high because it gets stored as glycogen, and then we use that to fuel workouts. Instead of worrying about macro percentages and things like that, just focus on adherence and enjoyment. How many of your friends, you, loved ones, friends, whatever, have been like, I'm cutting out all carbs and I'm going to lose so much weight and I'm going to look so hot this summer. And then summer comes around and they were like, that lasted 1 week. That was miserable. That sucked, right? That person did not focus on rule number 1, adherence and enjoyment. Rules number 2, 3, and 4, protein targets, calorie targets, and fiber targets. Okay, we haven't talked about fiber yet, but we're about to right after this. So macro percentages. Here's why I don't love macro percentages. 1, because carbs and fats, like I already mentioned, they don't matter. And 2, depending on the person, their calorie intake, their goals, you could like way overshoot the amount of protein that could be necessary. And again, higher protein isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just we are going to see diminishing returns and it will take away from carbs and fats. So for my example, I weigh 160 pounds and I consume about 3,000 calories per day. If I aim for 30% protein, that's 225 grams of protein. That's a lot of protein. Like that's just a lot. If I use the 0.7 to 1 gram multiplier, that's only aiming for 112 to 160. And 112 would be enough for me to maximize muscle growth as long as I'm not in like a pretty big deficit. If I'm in a pretty big deficit, I'm relatively lean, I'm going to be shooting for 160, maybe even a little bit higher. Okay, fiber. Most of you probably know you should be eating more fiber, but I don't think most people know the really, really, really how good it is for us. So just this isn't the time or place because I would need to have a whole presentation on just fiber, but just know that if you want happy stomach, happy gut bacteria, lowered risk of heart disease, better rates of weight maintenance and weight loss, you're going to want to pump that fiber up. Most people in America are probably getting in the neighborhood of like 5 to 10 grams per day, and we want to be shooting for like 25 to 35 grams per day. So good for gut health, good for bathroom regularity, helps with satiety. Aim for about 14 grams per 1,000 calories eaten. So if your calorie target is 1,700, you just take 14, multiply that by 1.7 here, and you get about 24 grams. Don't overthink this too much. Here are some sources of fiber. Again, feel free to take a picture of this, post on your story, tag at AlexTMFitness, and be like, this was the greatest presentation I've ever attended. I can't believe this was free. Oh my gosh, this guy's a freaking genius. You don't have to say that verbatim, but if you did, that'd be pretty sick. All right, so here are some sources. Raspberries are very high in fiber on a per calorie basis. Obviously, like fruits, vegetables, plants, whole grains, all these things, if it grew in the ground or on a bush or on a tree, well, I guess those things still grow on the ground, right? Then it's probably going to have fiber. If it's a plant, it's probably going to have fiber. Popcorn is one that I think is really underrated. Oatmeal also very underrated. I was doing like the plain oatmeal, just like Quaker Oats, and then I would like try to like get fancy, like, oh, let's throw some Greek yogurt in it. Let's throw some like, different stuff like that. That ended up being very unrealistic for me. Now my wife gets dinosaur egg oatmeal and she loves it. And I get, it's like some apple and cinnamon and then like brown sugar cinnamon. And I do 1 packet of each. And that's just like, it's delicious. It's I don't know, it feels like a cheat code, but without like, not in a bad way. Whatever. Anyway, oatmeal, great for you. Okay. The importance of step targets. So this is one of the most shocking studies that I've ever personally seen. So this was a meta-analysis on all-cause mortality risk and the importance of like steps. So Stronger by Science has a really good article on this, and it's called "Walking Away from an Early Death," which I think is just such a clever title name. But generally speaking, moving more daily could be one of the best things you can do for your health. It will increase energy expenditure. And in the context of this being a fat loss presentation, that's obviously very important. But coincidentally, so is not dying. That's as important as it is just to feel and look hot. Being alive is like arguably more important for most of us, I think. So a BMI over 30, small increase. BMI over 40, larger increase. Smoking is about the same. This is low steps, and low steps this is compared to people who walk 16,000 steps per day, which is a lot. That's a lot of steps, but let's just take it within the context of science. When we're looking for, when researchers are looking for, I don't know what the right word is, but like they're looking for effect size and things like that, they kind of take extremes. Okay, so compared to people who walk 16,000 steps per day, people who walk 2,000 steps per day saw a 200% higher rate of all-cause mortality. That is way more than smoking. That is way more than BMI over 40, which like we know these two things are not good for our health. I don't think anybody realizes how this is huge. This is very, very huge. So if there's one thing that you could do to improve your health and improve your energy expenditure and your fat loss, it's move more. So just get a cheap step tracker if you want. It doesn't have to be steps. Some people have asked me, I've got a few questions on this in the past. Does it matter how many, does it have to be steps? Can I go biking? Can I go swimming? Yes, absolutely. There's nothing magical about you putting one foot in front of another. It's just a way to track movement, right? And so it's an easy way to track movement because you can do the dishes. You can go walk the dogs. You can go walk around the grocery store. All these things, they really add up. All right. So step targets. If you're struggling to increase your step targets, because I've worked with a lot of clients that have only gotten 2,000, 3,000 steps per day, here are some ways to do that. A walking pad. Get a sit-stand desk. This one is. Every time I'm in a fat loss phase, the walking pad goes underneath here, and that'll pump my steps up. I'm not getting like 8,000 per day on the low end. Daily 15-minute walks. Just commit to just getting outside 10 minutes or just pace around your house. I like playing a game of chess, and I do 10 minutes per side, so it'll be up to 20 minutes, and I'll just pace the entire time. Get a dog. I think that's just life advice. Get a dog, and 2 dogs is even more fun. Not necessarily 2 times the work, but definitely more work. Park further away, use the furthest bathroom at work, go window shopping. Okay. Feeling satisfied in a deficit. Managing hunger is one of the most important things for sustainability and adherence. Obviously, if you're hungry, you're probably going to eat more. And if you're not hungry, you're probably not going to eat more. I like to use the example at Thanksgiving. When we have gone through all the turkey and all the stuffing and the mashed potatoes and the apple pie and all of that, right? Whatever your favorite Thanksgiving food is, the last thing you're thinking about is eating more. And obviously, I don't want all of us to try to aim for that most stuffed feeling, but it is important that we try to master hunger, because if we can decrease our hunger and increase our satiety, we will be a lot more successful with not just our calorie deficit, but our weight maintenance in the long run too. So very, very important. So here's some practical tips. Choose meals over snacks. I know I just said the snacks thing, the protein snacks thing, just take it with a grain of salt. Prioritize high volume foods. So high volume foods are things that are, they are large or hot. They weigh a lot based on a per calorie basis. So a good way of thinking about this is like 2 Oreos is 140 calories versus 140 calories of broccoli, which would be like this much broccoli. It's a lot of broccoli. And then pay attention to your hunger cues and the hunger scale. So think about hunger on a 1 to 10 scale. 1 being like you're absolutely stuffed, and then 10 being like I am so hungry I would eat cardboard. We want to try to stay within like the 4 to 6 range. If we let ourselves get way too hungry, we're going to rebound really hard this way, right? And then if we go to the point where we're stuffed, I think I did that opposite, but it doesn't matter. You guys understand what I'm saying. Here's some high volume foods. Again, feel free to take a picture of this. post on your Instagram story and be like, oh my God, this is the best presentation I've ever been to. He's solved it. He's be really vague. He's solved it. All right. Preserving muscle mass. This is very, very important. I swear we're getting near the end here, although I think we're moving along pretty well. Okay. When in deficit, we want to preserve as much muscle or fat-free mass. We can technically in our body, we have fat mass and then we have fat-free mass. Fat mass is exactly what it sounds like. It's adipose tissue, it's body fat, and then fat-free mass is literally everything that's not that. So, you have muscle, but you also have other less important stuff like your brain, your heart, your skin, your bones, all that kind of stuff. So fat-free mass is what a lot of people will refer to when they're talking, because it's hard to isolate just muscle, but it's pretty easy to isolate everything that's not body fat in terms of like when we're looking at research and stuff like that. So when we lose fat-free mass, specifically when we lose muscle, we will have increased hunger until baseline levels of that fat-free mass is restored. So it's really, really important that we try to preserve muscle. So I know there are a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to lose weight, but I don't necessarily want to gain muscle. I know that's tough shit. You got to at least maintain your muscle, right? So it's extremely, extremely important, not just for, those baseline levels of hunger. You don't want that to get out of control, out of hand. This is kind of what yo-yo dieting is, which is another free presentation I did like last month or 2 months ago. When a lot of people, they will crash diet, they'll cut calories really low, they won't lift weights, their weight goes down, but their fat-free mass has reduced even greater. Their muscle mass has reduced even greater. So then their hunger is spiked up and they increase to the point where maybe they were 180 pounds, they dropped to 170, but they lost a bunch of muscle. The body might increase the hunger levels and they end up 185 with less muscle than they started with, or to get back to that baseline level of muscle, they might be 185 pounds. Because if you're not lifting weights, you're not going to lose and gain muscle at the same rate. That's kind of what yo-yo dieting looks like in a nutshell. It's a miserable place to be. All right, so here's some ways to preserve muscle. So obviously the number one thing, you gotta lift weights. Try to use a structured training program. If you're like a program hopper where you get your workouts from Instagram swipe posts, you're just not going to progress at the same rate as somebody who is doing the same lifts over and over and over again. There are a lot of reasons for that, but I don't have the time to talk about them here. But if you have questions, throw them in the Q&A. Lift 2 to 4 times per week. You can still make great progress with lifting only 2 times per week. You do not need to be in the gym 5, 6, 7 times per week. 2 times per week, lifting weights, 30 minutes each. You would see, I'm not kidding, you would see phenomenal progress. Most people don't believe me when I say that. I am not kidding. 2 times per week, 30 minutes, you would still see phenomenal progress. As long as you are, the third bullet point here, taking sets close to failure. Your sets need to be hard. If you are doing bicep curls or squats or whatever, at the end of it, you're just like, you're feeling really good. It like wasn't that hard. You're not breathing hard. You did not work hard enough. What you should be looking for is, okay, I'm doing bicep curls, for example. It should, despite your hardest intentions, your max effort, it should slow down. Your concentric, or when you're doing like weight to the work or work to the weight, it should slow down a bit. All right, next, protein. We already talked about that. Here's what you want to aim for. And then don't lose weight too fast. So aim for a calorie deficit that is appropriate for you. Again, if you're trying to lose like 4 or 5 pounds per week, good luck to you. Good luck to you. Why is muscle so important? So here's something kind of depressing for your Saturday morning. The treatment costs associated with sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss, in the U.S. health system are about $19 billion per year in direct and indirect costs. Here are some benefits of adaptations to resistance training and aerobic training, so RT and AT. And so you can see resistance training, all these triangles, really good, and then also the circles. So very, very important. If you want to be healthier, you're going to want to lift weights. This is something that I think we are coming around to. Our parents, our grandparents, they were doing a lot of Pilates and just like those Gene Simmons workouts where you'd kind of like do some of these and, whatever, but they weren't doing anything. Now we have the closest thing possible to the fountain of youth, which is lifting weights. It really is that important. All right. Got about 4 slides left, maybe. Eating out and navigating social events. This is something where people feel like, I want to lose weight, but I don't have the capability. I just have a lot of stuff going on. I have a lot of events I have to go to, a lot of dinners, a lot of, friends and family are coming over. And so I want to overeat. So I get it. it makes it harder. It does. Ideally, we are all just lab rats in a vacuum, and we're given all of our meals and they're 400 to 600 calories each, and we just eat them and we feel super satisfied. But life is not like that. That's not the way life works. So you are going to have these uncertain moments. You're going to have these obstacles that you have to deal with. And so here are some ways or some tips to manage, going out, eating out, while still pursuing your fat loss goals, because that is absolutely possible if you actually try to plan ahead and you act appropriately, based on your goals. So one, overestimate your calorie intake. That chicken and pasta Alfredo, or the burger and fries, or whatever you got when you went out, the cook in the back, when you came to go get this $20 burger, the cook in the back was not like, how can I make this the most lean burger possible? I want to make sure that I don't want my customers to be happy, and I don't want them to necessarily feel like this is delicious food. I want them to be like, wow, that was a really low calorie burger. Nobody's going out to eat the worst burger they've ever had, to eat the leanest burger they've ever had. That cook wants to give you the best meal you've ever had. So he's throwing butter on it. He's throwing like sticks of butter. He's using fatty meat. He's using a bunch of Alfredo, olive oil, everything that he can do to make it delicious. So overestimate your calorie intake. Very important. If you think that a meal was 800 calories, just add like 200 or 400 to that. And I know it'll suck, but at least you have accurate data that you can work off of, rather than underestimating and feeling like I'm in a deficit, but I'm not losing weight. Because again, remember from slide 3, if you're not losing weight, you're not in a deficit. And if you don't have that data of like, wait, well, where are the calories coming from? Just please overestimate your calorie intake when you're going out to eat. Consider where spending calories makes sense for you. Do you really need to, if you go out to dinner, do you really need that hot fudge sundae too? Just go eat an Oreo at home. I know it's not the same thing. I know. But if you have fat loss goals, you do kind of have to make these sacrifices somewhere. There has to be some kind of budge somewhere. And if not, okay. It's like saying, I really want to start saving money, but man, I can't stop gambling on the weekends. Every weekend, I want to spend $500 at the casino. And you'd be looking at me like, stop spending $500. Can we spend $50 at the casino if the casino is so important to you? And I'm like, no, $500, all on black, all or nothing. And I never win that one though, at least with casinos. Not advocating for gambling, but all right. And remember the basics. Aim for high protein and a fiber source. Just try to have a veggie. Maybe instead of burger and fries, I'm going to be boring, but maybe get a burger and broccoli. I'm so sorry. It's just like, fiber is really good for us, guys. And then when you're going out to events, one, acknowledge you're going to go over your calorie target. Just have that in your head. It'll help you kind of rationalize, okay, yeah, I'm up on the scale a little bit, tomorrow. Again, that's more from stomach content and glycogen and water. It's not body fat. Or two, just give your best effort to stick to your calorie target by using some of these tips. Limit liquid calories. Alcohol, extremely calorie dense, and usually leads to the point where we're like, I want to get the mozzarella sticks too. You get 2-3 beers in you, and you're like, honestly, I think I could go for an appetizer sampler before I order, my meal. We've all been there. Pay attention to satiety cues. You don't have to clear your plate. You can just eat the food until you're full. You already got that sunk cost. So don't fall into the sunk cost fallacy of like, I spent $20 on this burger and fries. I got to eat every single bite. Eat as much as you need to feel satisfied. Don't eat to the point where you are feeling, dissatisfied. Include fiber, obviously, and opt for a leaner protein. All right, here are your key takeaways. This is the part where you wipe your eyes, you come back to your phone, your iPad, your computer, wherever you're watching, and you're like, oh, wait, I kind of zoned out. What was I supposed to learn from this? You choose a calorie target that supports your goals and feels attainable. If you weren't here for that, or if you just zoned out, we did talk about how to find a calorie target earlier in this. You hit a protein target that supports muscle growth and satiety. We did do that as well. You consume 25 to 35 grams of fiber, ideally varied. We did that, and we found your fiber target, and we gave you a bunch of sources. You move your body every day, and then you lift weights 2 to 4 times per week. All right, here's the part. I don't love this part, but we're gonna move through this part really quick, and then we're gonna do the Q&A. So please stick around for that. All right, what's next? If you want the support Danielle, the dietitian, and I have created a program called Forward Forever. I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's really good. It's really, really good. Because of the size of it, we have been able to allocate a ton of resources to it, and it is the best and highest value program I've personally ever seen. So it comes with structured workouts, built-in social support, guidance on all the stuff that matters. Here's some member improvements, which is very exciting. Very proud of this. So I'm pulling up my phone because there was a question that I got in advance. It says what to do when weight is good / healthy, but body composition is not. Thank you. And so what you would want to do here is just lift weights. You know, if somebody is really, really happy with their weight, but they want to change their body composition, then you just keep eating as you are with roughly calorie maintenance, and then you lift weights. And over time, if we are eating at calorie maintenance, but we are building muscle, then body fat will very, very slowly decrease at basically the same rate. All right. Well, if nobody else has any questions, I guess I did my job pretty well then. Great presentation. Yes, Forward Forever is great. Such a supportive group. Thank you, Jeanette. Appreciate it. All right, everybody. We will wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming. Really, really appreciate all of you spending your Saturday morning with me. And that will be it. Great humor. I appreciate it. Thank you, Tracy. All right. Take care, everybody.